I have wanted to make a video like this for the longest time, but I kept putting it off because I felt like I wasn't ready because I'm not technically adept and because my entire process is just me clicking buttons until the song sounds good. But then I thought about it and I said to myself, you know what? Well, I don't actually remember what I said to myself, but I realized that if anything, this video would be very comprehensible for people who either want to start making music or people who make music and just wing it the entire time. So when I think of style savvy music, I think of three key elements. I think of synths, I think of strings, and I think of bass. I'm going to explain why the keys are there as well, but I went ahead and set up a little template for myself because I think that makes it a lot more fun. I definitely did not spend 10 minutes looking for these icons. So the reason the keys are there is because even though I wouldn't note them as a key element of these songs, they kind of serve as like the foundation of them. Usually a style savvy song will have like an electric piano playing some chords, and then the rest of the song is kind of built around those chords. So I'm going to start with that. I'm gonna put the I'm gonna raise the BPM as well. I feel like in terms of tempo, style savvy songs can be, like they could sit anywhere, but I want this one to be a little upbeat, so I'm gonna put it, I think, to 140 to start. Okay, so I think that's good. Very simple, nothing too complex. This is just like the Logic Pro classic electric piano. So I'm going to go into Expand 2 and I'm going to look for an electric piano. Mind you, I bought Expand 2 like 2 days ago, so I don't know where anything is. So you're going to watch me figure it out, basically. I think these I'm going to bring down to, I'm going to try 60. Just so it isn't so cramped in terms of the sound. And I kind of want it to have a bit of rhythm to it. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the synth, and I kind of already have an idea of the melody. Okay, now my favorite part, the strings. I hear very often in style savvy songs pizzicato strings. That's like the staple for me of these songs. So I'm going to start with that. Again, we're going back into Expand 2 because their strings, specifically the pizzicato strings, best $90 I've ever spent on anything. Between this section instrument from Logic Pro and the pizzicato strings from Expand, I don't know which I like better. You know what? Why not both? I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to layer them. And I also panned the strings a little bit off to the left because style savvy songs have so much panning. That's kind of getting into mixing, but there's so much panning. Sometimes there will be instruments that are entirely on the left or the right. So I'm definitely going to make sure to incorporate some of that. So in terms of the bass in style savvy songs, or a lot of them, is usually pretty characteristic and kind of funky. So I'm going to try to mimic that a little bit. Okay, so I like this one. I think it's got a nice texture to it, but it may be a little too much for the song. So what I usually like to do is layer it with, I'm gonna look for the 808 in Logic. This, like the texture of this bass isn't coming through enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut off the low end. So really, instead of the actual bass, you're getting just that texture. Okay, so I think I want to add one more synth. I want to add that mallet sound that I hear in a couple Style Savvy songs, just to kind of decorate it a little more. Okay, so this is what we're working with. This melody's kind of giving Girlfriend by Girls' Generation. I don't know what about it. Wasn't intentional, but I like it. So I ended up finding these bells that I really like. The drums in Style Savvy songs are actually very simple. You could literally get away with just using a kick and a snare. You would just have the kick on every beat and then the snare on 2 and 4. So all you're hearing is basically kick, snare, kick, snare. I'm looking for a kick that's kind of muted but also kind of punchy, because I feel like the kick and the snare themselves don't have much character, but they're kind of like, they're very present in the song. I don't know if that makes sense. I think this one, I like that one, so I'm going to start with that. In terms of the snare, I'm looking for something kind of electronic sounding, video gamey. That's the best way I think I can describe the snare sound. Okay, I've got that down in the simplest form possible. If you're really lazy, you can stop here with the drums. But if you have a little more energy, you can put in a hi-hat, because most of these songs do have hi-hats, but they're kind of disguised in the song, so they're not very present, but they're there. I'm going to adjust the velocity of these as well. See, I have like a group of 3 here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to lower the velocity / volume of the second one. Okay, so I added another hi-hat here at the bottom, and I put that one on the right. I panned it to the right, whereas this one is panned to the left. That way the drums sound a little more whole. I mentioned that these songs have a lot of panning, so usually the keys are panned, not entirely, I mean actually sometimes, but for this song I'm not going to do it entirely. I'm just going to slightly pan it off, I think to the right. So now you hear that more on the right than in the middle. I'm going to do a panning automation. So I'm going to select pan here. I'm going to do it again only slightly, but I'm going to put it right to left. What is that? Like every half a beat, I'm going to pan it. This is how this sounds. Very subtle panning. It's not very noticeable, but it's there. So it kind of adds dimension to the song. This bell is a little too perfect sounding to me. I don't know. So I think I'm going to do some detuning down here. I'm going to make it a little bit off key. Okay, I like that a lot better. Okay, now in terms of the arrangement, I think I'm going to start with just these 3 tracks up here, the keys, the synth, and the bell. And I'm going to continue that, and then I think I'm going to introduce the bass at this point, but I'm going to set the strings aside and also the drums. Okay, so last minute decision, I decided to add an organ to this, and I panned it all the way to the left. It's the same exact melody as the keys, except I took off the top note of each chord. I just took off, you know, the top notes. And then I also made over here, I made it a little choppier here as well. Okay, so I think this is pretty much done. So I'm gonna go mix it and then I will come back. I'm back. I mixed it to the best of my ability, and I also added a downlifter here. So the last thing I want to do is add some bit crush to this because that is going to give it that authentic Nintendo, low quality sound. Not too much because it wasn't that long ago. So the audio quality of these songs when you listen to them on YouTube is not terrible. It's actually pretty good. So I'm only going to use a little bit of Bit Crush. And that's it. I'm going to let you hear the whole song, but thank you for watching. I hope you were able to follow along because I feel like half of this is going to end up being completely unintelligible because I am not good at talking and explaining while doing. So I can just hope for the best. And I'm also a pretty boring person, so hopefully you haven't fallen asleep either. Yeah, that's it.